We are coming up on Easter Sunday in just a couple of weeks. In fact, Easter's a little bit early this year. It's coming up on April 1st. And so April Fool's Day will be Easter Sunday. And I really am going to work hard to not make any April Fool's jokes about Jesus in the grave on Easter Sunday. But that's coming up in just a few weeks, and I'm really excited for it. It's one of the biggest celebrations throughout the year as Christians as we celebrate Jesus Christ risen from the grave. And it's a time for us to celebrate, to enjoy, to share the good news. And so as we get closer and closer to Easter, I thought, man, I would like to just kind of look at what Jesus' life is doing as he gets closer and closer to Easter. Because what we find is that as Jesus begins to move toward Jerusalem and as he begins to move toward the cross, I think what you discover is that Jesus becomes very crystal clear in his mission and what he's trying to accomplish on earth. Not that he wasn't crystal clear in what he was doing before, but as he speaks, it becomes clearer and clearer to those people that are following him what he intends to do. And so I think that we can gain insight into what Jesus is trying to accomplish as we look at his life as he gets closer and closer to the cross. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to be in a series that we're calling Be and Do Here and Now, and we're looking at the life of Jesus as right before Holy Week, right before the triumphant entry, and as he makes his way to the cross. So we're going to look at several scenes from Jesus' life in that time. And in this whole thing, I want us to be asking a specific question. I don't know if you grew up in church or not, but I grew up in church, and so it was popular probably when I was maybe in middle school, probably like middle school, high school, to have bracelets. And the bracelets had 4 letters on them and a question mark, and it was WWJD. And it stood for this question: what would Jesus do? And it was supposed to make you kind of contemplate your actions in the moment. What would Jesus do? And it's not a bad question. I just don't think it's the best question. Because especially as a middle schooler or a teenager, like Jesus had nothing to say about Facebook. I've looked all through the Bible. It's not in there. And he doesn't mention Netflix at all. He doesn't talk about road rage. Jesus, and so what you found was that you had all of these teenagers asking, what would Jesus do? And then they were going like, I have no idea what Jesus would do, because Jesus never mentions this. And so you got a little lost, because people started trying to look for like this Jesus rule for everything. Is there a Jesus rule for every situation that I was going to encounter? And there just isn't, because that's not how the Bible works. The Bible's not a list of rules. It's not how the Bible works. And then you've also got this question of like, beyond what Jesus would do, there's also this question about Jesus cares about what we would be, who you be. And it goes together. And so I think a better question would be, what would Jesus want me to be and do here and now? And the last part of that question is also important, here and now, because the good news is not just that Jesus came. The good part of the good news is that God came to earth at a very specific point in time, and he made himself wrapped as a human being for that specific time. And so when he talked about issues and he talked about it in a way that was appropriate for the people that were living in AD 30. He came to Israel in the region of Judea under the Roman Empire, and he clothed himself as a human being. God, the divine God, the Almighty God, clothed himself as a human being for that specific point in time. And the good news is that God is willing to insert himself into our lives, that he's seeking us so much that he will come and he will adapt himself to everything that we need right there in that moment. And so Jesus was exactly the Messiah, and he spoke the exact way that the good news needed to be communicated in that moment in history, because God cares that deeply. It's not just that God comes, it's that he chooses to wrap himself in a way that makes it applicable for the here and now. And so as we look at Jesus' life, the question that we ask is, am I being someone that represents Jesus here and now? Am I being someone that represents Jesus for right where I am right now? And so for us here tonight, the question would be, am I representing Jesus for downtown in 2018? Not for, we've always tried to be a church shaped for downtown. We're creating a family of churches, and in that family of churches, we have a church that's shaped for downtown and a church that's shaped for Southwest Las Vegas. So we're trying to be a church that's shaped for the exact here where we are, and not for the time that we wish we were born in, or the time that when we may have come to Christ, but we're trying to be a church for where we are right now, because that's what we see in Jesus. What would Jesus want me to be and do here and now? And as Jesus gets closer and closer to his own death and his own resurrection, and he clearly communicates about his mission, it's an opportunity for us to look at it and hold kind of a reflection up and say, am I following Jesus on his mission? What would Jesus want me to be and do here and now? And would it align with the mission that he has about himself as he makes his way toward the climax of his life here on earth, the crucifixion and the resurrection? And so as we make our way toward Easter Sunday, that's what we're challenging ourselves with. What would Jesus want me to be and do here and now as we make our way toward Easter? And what does the world around me need? And so if you have a Bible, you can find this story in Luke chapter 19. What we're going to do over the next few weeks is we're going to take one episode from each of the Gospels, each of the histories about Jesus' life. And tonight it's going to be from Luke. And if you don't have a Bible, we've got some out of the concierge cart we'd love to give you. You can also download it, and we'll have it here on this screen here. This story comes from Jesus' life that's recorded by Luke. Luke was a doctor. And what he did was he meticulously gathered the facts about Jesus' life and then wrote them down so that people who were seeking Jesus could know who he was. And so he records that for us. And here's what he says in Luke chapter 19, verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zaccheus, and he was the chief tax collector in the region. He had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. And so he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. Now, we're in the midst of tax season, so many of us are doing our taxes, and especially during this time of year, but really any time of the year. The IRS is not the most popular branch of government. They're just not a very popular, not someone you want to interact with. Now, tax collectors are even less popular back in this day. Not just because they are taking your money, but because basically they are powerful crooks. They charge exorbitant rates of taxes that you have to pay. But not all of the taxes go to the government. What they are able to do is they charge a little extra, and then they take a little cut off, and they siphon it off to their own bank account. And they have all of the authority to do it. And so this is what's going on. And so for Jews who are living in Judea, the tax collectors are their fellow countrymen, their fellow Jews, but they're working for the oppressive, invading Roman government. And so they represent this government that they don't want to be there, and they're ripping them off. They're taking their money. And so Zaccheus is the chief tax collector in the region. He perhaps oversaw other tax collectors. So everybody's kicking money back to Zaccheus. And so he's this reviled kind of human being in his own neighborhood. He has money. He has power. But he doesn't have everything. Apparently he has some problems. He has some issues. Maybe the money and the power aren't working for him. You know? His neighbors and his countrymen hate him. Maybe when he wakes up and he looks at the mirror in the morning, maybe he sees a sellout, a fraud. Maybe he sees a lonely man So he doesn't have it all, but he has some kind of hope. Because he's heard about Jesus. And Jesus has this way about him. Jesus has this power and authority that people have noticed that seems to come from some completely other source. His teachings are groundbreaking. And he talks about a God who loves. And so when Jesus comes to town, Zaccheus has to see him. And so he heads to the tree. Yes, because he's short. But also maybe because he doesn't want to have to stand among the crowd. He doesn't want to feel their judgment and their hostility. Maybe he wants to see the good teacher, Jesus, from a safe distance, where Jesus can't see through Zacchaeus' own facade. But then something totally unexpected happens. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and he called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Don't you just love how Jesus invites himself over? Hey, Zacchaeus, I'm coming to your house. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and he took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. He's gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. And meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord. And if I've cheated people on their taxes, he's cheated people on their taxes. There's no doubt about it. If I've cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. And Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today. For this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who were lost. Now, we can gain a lot of things from this story, and this evening we're only going to be able to focus on just a few of them for a little bit. First, I want to look at this last verse, verse 10. For the Son of Man came to seek and save what was lost. This is Jesus' clearest, most succinct statement about his purpose and his mission on earth. The Son of Man came to seek and save what was lost. What did Jesus come to do? He came to seek and save what was lost. Did he do healings? Yes, for sure he did healings. But why did he do healings? Because he was seeking and saving what was lost. Did he miraculously feed people? Heck yeah, he did. 5,000 of them at one time. But why did he do that? Because he's seeking and saving what was lost. Did he have groundbreaking teaching? Yes, the Sermon on the Mount is a upside down, flip the world over kind of teaching. It's unlike anything the people had ever heard before. Why did he do it? Because he's coming to seek and save what was lost. Everything that Jesus does in his life is because he's seeking and saving what was lost. And so you get this statement from Jesus, this is why I came. This is why I left heaven, why I gave up the privileges of divinity and came and was born in a manger, have lived on this earth. I've come, I am here, I am doing things, I'm here and now to seek and save what was lost. And so as we look at our own lives, as people who say, hey, I'm following Jesus, we have to ask ourselves the question, am I about the things that Jesus is about? The way that we would ask it is, am I seeking the things that Jesus would seek? The reason we're called Christians is because it started actually as a derogatory term. They're trying to make fun of people for following Jesus. Oh, look, they think they're little Christs. And that's true. That's exactly what we are. We're little Christs. Are we about the same things that Jesus was about? Are we seeking and saving what was lost? And so as I look at this story, I'm asking myself, well, where do I find myself in this story? Oftentimes when I read the Bible, I like to think of myself aligned with the hero, with the good guy. And so you look at this story and you go, well, obviously, geez, Jake, you're like Jesus. No. That's not it. I think we've got to dig a little bit deeper. And so I want to look at some of the characters here in this story and ask ourselves, where do we find ourselves today? You might find yourself as Zaccheus. You know? You're still looking for something else. You have some things, but you're still missing something else. When you're looking for that something else, you're willing to do almost anything to find a different kind of view. You know? You might be climbing a corporate ladder, trying to get, maybe that's what it'll be, or maybe there's a person out there that will finally fulfill the things that I'm looking for. Perhaps it's a substance, or a rush of adrenaline, or binge eating food, or binge watching Netflix. Maybe that will finally fill in the gap of the thing that I'm looking for. And we're constantly looking for this thing that will fulfill us and give us the peace and the hope and the joy that we really want in life. And so you find yourself at Zaccheus, and Zaccheus finds himself so desperate that he's willing to climb up a tree. He's trying to find that thing that he's looking for. And so maybe that's where you find yourself today. I think that most of us find ourselves like that. I think at times we all kind of try and substitute something else. Something else for what we really need, and what we really need is Jesus. So you might find yourself as Zaccheus. I think it's interesting that Zaccheus is so desperate that he's willing to climb up the tree, but he's not desperate enough to kind of push his way to the front of the crowd. I think it's almost like Zaccheus wants to see Jesus, but he wants it to be safe. You know? Like he's heard about a good teacher, but he wants it to be safe. And so often, what we want is we like the good things about Jesus, the nice things, the things that make us feel good, but we don't want to get so close to Jesus that it starts to get dangerous. We like Jesus from a safe distance. There's a line in one of my favorite sets of books. I love the Chronicles of Narnia, written by C.S. Lewis. And in those books, there's a lion named Aslan, and Aslan is this representation, kind of metaphor for God in the books. And the characters are asking about Aslan, and they find out, the little girl finds out that he's a lion. And so she asks, she says, is he safe? And the person that she's asking the question to responds like, no, he's not, it's not safe, he's a lion. Like, no, it's not safe. He's not safe, but he's good. And that's the same truth about Jesus. Following Jesus isn't safe. Jesus is not a safe person. Jesus will mess up your life, but he's good. You can't really follow Jesus, and you can't embrace the goodness of following Jesus when you try and keep Jesus at a safe distance. If Jesus had remained at a safe distance, he would have just continued walking by Zaccheus' tree. I mean, Jesus isn't safe to Zaccheus' bank account. He says, I'm giving half of my wealth to the poor, and I'm paying back the people that I ripped off 4 times as much. Like, that's not a safe way to get, to encounter Jesus. But he's good. And so if you find yourself kind of trying to I like some of the teachings that Jesus has, or, Jesus is a good teacher, but, it doesn't really impact my life. I would say you're not close enough to Jesus. You're not wrestling enough with Jesus. I've been following Jesus for a long time, and Jesus still consistently messes up my life. It's not safe, but he's good. Maybe you find yourself as another character, and maybe you find yourself as part of the crowd. The crowd is here in this story, and they're following Jesus. They're there. They like Jesus. They're kind of they want to be around him. That they're giving him praise. They love who he is. They're there. They want to be kind of close to Jesus, and they're there and they're encountering him. But the crowd is making a dangerous mistake, Because what's happening is they're keeping Zaccheus away from Jesus. Zaccheus can't get to Jesus because the crowd is in the way. And this is a danger for any of us who have followed Jesus for any length of time. Is that what you start to do is you start to say, well, I like Jesus this way. I like it when I encounter Jesus this way, and when I think about Jesus this way, and you should encounter Jesus that way, and you should think about Jesus that way, and this is kind of everything that I like, and we start to think about ourselves, and we lose track of the sight that there's somebody who needs to get to Jesus, who's seeking Jesus, who's looking for hope, who's looking for life, who's looking for joy, and it just might happen that our preferences are getting in the way of them actually encountering Jesus. Well, I don't want to have to stand behind anybody on the road from Jericho. I know Zaccheus is short, but I don't even like the way he looks. That guy ripped me off. I don't want him standing next to me. I'd prefer for him to go away. And so the crowd is keeping Zaccheus away from him. It's a dangerous spot to be a part of the crowd. You don't want to find yourself where you're so wrapped up in who you are that you miss sight of what Jesus is trying to accomplish. For the Son of Man came to seek and save what was lost. And so as we ask ourselves the question, what would Jesus want me to be and do here and now? We have to ask ourselves, is what I'm doing more about my comfort and my preferences, or is it about Jesus' mission to seek and save what was lost? Now, there might be some people in the crowd who just are kind of ignorant. They don't know Zaccheus is hanging around. There's probably some people in the crowd who just don't like him. They just had to pay their tax bill. And they got ripped off along the way, and so their money is sitting in Zaccheus' bank account. And you can see their reaction when Jesus stops. And he invites Zaccheus down, and they're indignant. They're angry. Why, Jesus? Why would you choose to spend time with Zaccheus when you could choose to spend time with me? Why would you go to Zaccheus' house when you could come to my house? Why would you go to that guy's house? He just ripped me off. Why are you hanging out with Zaccheus? But Jesus is crystal clear. The Son of Man came to seek and save what was lost. This isn't about you. It's about the people that don't know about me yet. This is the mission that Jesus is on. And so it's a dangerous place to find yourself in a part of a crowd. It's why we constantly ask ourselves, are we a church shaped for downtown? I want to thank you for being willing to gather together as a church on Sunday evenings. I know that's different. I know it's not how we did it for 3 years. It's a little bit weird. But I don't know. I don't even know if they're still out there. Every weekend that I have tried to come and set up, well, on Sunday mornings, when I would pull up with the trailer, I just pull up and I park right outside the door here. It was great. I could just unload all the stuff right there. Have a few people help. No problem. Every evening, since we've started these 6 o'clock things, I try and pull up, and there's somebody in that parking space right there. This evening, you saw, I don't know if they were still out there when you came in, there were 50 Vespas all out in front. I didn't even know that many people owned Vespas in Las Vegas. They're all out there. And I just finished preaching this same message this morning at our other church with Epic Church. I preached the same message. I drove the car up, and my first thought was, those darn Vespas are in my parking spot. And I caught myself going, Jake, you're part of the crowd. You're just so angry that these people won't let you park next to the building so that you can. Why are all these people standing around the place where I want to do church? You know, I'm just so. But I want to thank you because for the past few weeks, there's always somebody new out there. I've had people ask me over and over again, there's a church here? They would not be here at 10 a.m. They're not even awake at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. But they're here and they're seeing that. And I want to thank you for being willing to do that and change that. And I know it's not part of my preference. I'm pretty sure it's not a part of your preference. But we're willing to shape a church for downtown so that people can come and seek Jesus. We want to be about what Jesus is about. There's a final character in the story. And I guess it's a little bit of a stretch to call it a character, but it's one of the things that I love, and that's the tree in this story. The tree. My hope for my life and for this church and for you is that we would be a tree. I hope you're a tree that helps someone else see Jesus. I hope that someone finds your life trustworthy enough and strong enough that they're willing to kind of latch onto it and climb up into it just so that they can get a glimpse of what they've been hoping for. Because I believe that God is so good and so loving that he was seeking Zaccheus just as desperately as he seeks you and I. And so when he saw the seedling on the side of the road, he was thinking about the man that would one day climb the tree. You know, when it rained and the tree roots grew deeper, God cheered because he knew that the branches need to grow higher so that Zaccheus can see over the crowd. When the winds blew and the storms beat against the tree, God looked and he was happy about the strength that would come from those storms so that in the right moment a man could come along and he could sit on the branch. I want us to be a tree, and so I'm committing my life to you guys so that you could kind of grab onto my life and hopefully see Jesus because of it. And I want us to be a church that's committed to that, and I want your life to be like a tree. I love the tree in this story. There are things that you're going through and things that you're experiencing that are making you into a tree so that someone else can come and see Jesus. And so as I look at the story, what's the thing that's most aligned with Jesus' mission? For the Son of Man came to seek and save what was lost. It's not Zaccheus. Zaccheus has no idea what he's looking for. He's just trying to see Jesus. It's not the crowd, they're getting in the way, but the tree. The tree is aligned with Jesus' mission. The tree is on board. The tree is doing its part. And so as we ask ourselves the question, what would Jesus want me to be and do here and now? We're asking ourselves, how do I need to live so that somebody could climb up into my life? You know what? It's probably not going to be comfortable. Kick you and scrape you and get their dirty shoes all over you. Might not be comfortable, but it's what Jesus was about. I hope you and I are the tree.